Recruiters are wary of letting AI run a candidate conversation, and candidates are wary of being on the other end of one. So how do you win over both sides and still get the value that AI promises? Keep listening to find out. Support for this podcast comes from Mackie. Mackie began by replacing the resume screen with a fair, structured voice interview that assesses real skills before anyone formally applies. Now that same intelligence is extending across the whole funnel, from the first conversation to the final decision. They recently launched Tomo, an AI interview assistant for hiring managers, the next step towards one connected system that screens, interviews, and gives every candidate a consistent, fair experience at scale. See how the end-to-end picture comes together by going to mackiepeople.com. That's mackiepeople.com. And Mackie is spelled M-A-K-I.
There's been more of scientific discovery, more of technical advancement and material progress in your lifetime and mine than in all the ages of history.
Hi there, and welcome to episode 807 of Recruiting Future with me, Matt Alder. Application volumes are climbing fast, and AI has made it far easier for candidates to produce a strong-looking resume. For talent teams trying to give every candidate a fair hearing, the traditional model of recruiting is starting to break down. Some employers are now handing the first conversation over to an AI voice agent, and that raises some obvious concerns. Does automating the first step strip out the human connection that recruiting depends on? The teams doing this well are finding the answer isn't what a lot of recruiters expect, and that getting it right depends as much on how openly it's done as on the technology itself. So, what does this look like in practice? My guests this week are Jean-Baptiste Anne, Global Director of Talent Acquisition at Mirakl, and Anneliese Muscari, their Head of AMER and Global Go-to-Market Talent Acquisition. In our conversation, they share why they made the change to AI interviewing, how their candidates have responded, and what it means for the future role of the recruiter. Hi, JB. Hi, Anneliese. Welcome to the podcast. It is a pleasure to have you on the show. Could we just start off with you introducing yourselves and telling everyone what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start. So I'm JB. I'm the Global Director of Talent Acquisition and Employer Brand at Mirakl. We are based in Paris and operating across the globe, and Anneliese is a testament to that. We are running a full TA team across the globe and across all the type of, let's say, jobs. So we are hiring tech, G&A, go-to-market roles from Boston up to Australia. And maybe a quick thing around my background, because I'm not a traditional HR guy or recruiting guy. I took the lead of the TA team 2 years ago, but I joined Mirakl 4 years ago to lead the B2B customer success team, and I have a background of let's say engineering, consulting, and I work in let's say global corporate companies like Société Générale in France or Amazon in Europe.
Fantastic. And Anneliese, tell us about yourself.
Sure. Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for having us on. My name's Anneliese Muscari. I oversee all go-to-market hiring globally. So as JB mentioned, that includes kind of the AMER, LATAM, APAC region, and then also EMEA as well. I do come from more of a traditional recruiting background, kind of starting in agency, then spent some time in corporate, and then most recently, 4.5 years ago, joined Mirakl.
Fantastic. So obviously, lots of things going on in the market at the moment. So let's start with this. I mean, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing in recruiting right now?
I think, like everyone, we have seen a huge spike in the volume of application. Last year, we processed more than 95K application a year. And it's growing year on year. As an example, for example, only on internship, we received 14,000 applicants, and it's growing by 43% year on year. So this is really huge and honestly too much. And, when I took the role, I had an engineering reflex, like saying, more inputs mean more outputs. So I was happy, with the volume saying, yeah, maybe it's going into the right way. It was it was a hard thing to understand after a couple of months that nope, not at all. The quality signal is not directly linked to the, let's say, the number and the volume of applicants, not at all. And I would say it's even worse, if I might say, with AI and everyone that can polish, the application, and it making almost free to apply. The big, let's say, challenge that we are facing is how to manage that high intensity number of application, while at the same time, and this is our key obsession at Mirakl, is to provide the best, or let's say as best as we can, a great candidate experience. And everyone, is an individual, so someone apply, to us. It's even if it's so a lot, there's a human behind each application, and so our strategy and our thinking around this is to make sure that everyone gets a feedback, either it's positive or negative, and this is not the point, but a valuable feedback, so to learn from our application process and so on. So I think I would say on our side, the biggest challenge is the volume, and at the same time finding the right balance with it's a great candidate experience.
I'd agree with that. I think we're dealing with unprecedented application volumes with sometimes seemingly perfect resumes because everyone can use AI to polish them exactly. And recruiters are now tasked with this very high volume of applications to go through while still providing an excellent candidate experience for every single person that applied. It's causing a lot of friction in the recruitment process, and something that was a huge priority for us to try and solve.
So you've also been going through a few layers of AI transformation. What was the motivation behind that, and how did you start that process?
Just to be super honest, I would say it didn't start with a vision, right? It's we face that level of application, and it was a math problem, and again, maybe it's because of my engineering hat, but it was like we need to find a way to manage through this volume. And the team last year, we generated as a company more than 9,000 scorecards and so on. So we needed a way to go through that volume challenge. So the idea was not to, use AI just for using AI or using a solution that will solve everything. No, let's go back and say, okay, how we can face that. So we started to explore a couple of things, and it was very clear that we need to manage a way to allow the team to take a better decision when we are reviewing application. So our main objective was to find any solution that will be at the very beginning of the, let's say, the funnel. So from application to, let's say, TA, so talent acquisition screening and so on. So in that way, so we know how we will be going to filter out much more application, and without, let's say, not without a guesswork, right? My obsession here is to gather more information so the team can take a conscious decision or let's go and move forward. The challenge when you are facing such a volume is you don't have time. And so you are looking for the perfect candidate. And through that volumes, honestly, it's pretty easy, to pick, I don't know, let's say 50, 100, almost perfect candidate and make them moving forward. And honestly, we were missing some talents, right? Because they are not that perfect, but the team has a difficult choice to make. Every time they are seeing an application, it's either I will invest 1 hour meeting with you, right? With the preparation, with the scorecard and so on, or either I go and pass. And so it's easy to pass, right? It's easy to pass even on the best candidate because we have so much of them. And the challenge is, we only have, 1 page or let's say 2 pages. We don't know on the resume, right? And maybe a LinkedIn profile, and that's also it's really hard, let's say, to take a really great decision only based on something that also you can pretend and you can make it or you can polish it through AI, right? So the idea was to find a way that it's effective, that it's scalable at the time that we can say, okay, we can have, I don't know, 90,000, times that system running for us. It's both scalable and at the same time, it's great on the, let's say, candidate experience, because if we are adding too much friction in our application process, also the best talents, they are not going to apply to us because it's too complicated. It's not, a good time investment from their perspective and so on. So this is why we thought that, the beginning of the discussion was how we can survive, if I might say, on a 10x, application volume. So it's not even 90K, it could be 200,000, whatever. We need to rebuild something, not as an efficiency and saying, okay, we are going to absorb, 10 or 20% more. It's like, this what we are going to put in place, any process, system, whatever, and I think we'll discuss that later in the discussion. It's we can do the same, but with 1 million of applicants or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not sacrificing, you're improving candidate experience and improving quality at the same time. So yeah, makes perfect sense. And let's talk about the technology here. What role has technology played in that, and what is it that you put in place?
I think technology and AI is one of the solutions that is able to absorb and scale, I would say, absorb the volume and scale with a limited cost. When I speak about cost, from resources to even euro and dollars. And also is able now to provide a pretty good experience and even say great experience, mostly through vocal AI agent. And so this is why, the very good news, because we started with an issue and say, okay, we can take the technology to offer the two at the same time. Because, we can always say, let's add a ton of questionnaire, let's add, a motivational letter or whatever, but it's not, let's say, providing a great experience. So here the technology, and because we did this late 2025, we, let's say, started to discover all the world of AI vocal agents, because I think the technology was mature enough to provide a great experience. I wouldn't have said the same, and the conclusion and the decision wouldn't have been the same if we were in 2024 or even before.
Things have moved on very, very quickly, haven't they? Anneliese, tell us a bit more about the tech.
So we decided on a company called Mackie People that is sort of like the background technology of Emma. So you'll hear us maybe speak about Emma throughout the rest of the conversation, but that's who we're calling our vocal AI agent. But Mackie is a great company who has a variety of types of AI assessments. They also have more in-depth skill assessments outside of their voice agents. And their scoring is based on kind of science-backed data to help score and evaluate candidates. So we felt really comfortable and confident about not only the technology they provided, but also how they score and evaluate candidates as well.
I mean, it's an interesting shift, isn't it? Because recruiting is such a human-centric activity, as you said earlier when you're talking about the candidate experience. What's it like to hand that sort of first conversation over to an AI voice agent? And did your feelings around that change?
Yeah. Yes. Honestly, I was a little worried about it. I'm not afraid to admit it. I went into it with a great deal of skepticism, perhaps. As a recruiter, and really a person, I'm someone that values that one-to-one human connection. And I really leverage that both in the way that I recruit, but also as a core tenet of how I lead my team. So when thinking about handing off the first interaction to AI, almost felt against these core values. And I really thought it could put our candidate experience at risk. On the other hand, I could see the logic clearly, particularly around the benefits of consistently providing a great bar on fairness and consistency. So as I started partnering with the Mackie team to launch Emma and was really involved in how we trained her, how she would be integrated into the recruitment process, I started to realize that perhaps I was thinking a bit too small about candidate experience, and maybe more so in a true traditional way. Really what Emma provides is the ability to take the first step with Mirakl at any time of day, anywhere, regardless of the recruiter who's on the search or who reviews their resume. They can be assured that their experience is the same as everyone else's, graded upon a consistent science-backed rubric. And so I think in a really competitive talent market, that consistency builds trust that ultimately can turn candidates maybe even into advocates for the company, regardless of the outcome. So yes, my feelings did change as we went through the implementation and eventual launch. I think too, the other thing I started to really realize is this also freed up the TA's time to focus their energy on the interactions that require kind of that real human in-depth connection with candidates, right? To fully engage with them, understand their background, prepare them for what a interview could look like at Mirakl, but even also internally, fully immerse ourselves with our hiring teams, coaching them, and ultimately spending more time with the business. So I also saw the benefits there around having a bit more time to focus on some of those uniquely human connections. One thing I will highlight, though, is Emma does not make any of the hiring decisions. So at any critical juncture, decision-making point, a human is always making the decision. So that's one piece that will not change and is really important for us to emphasize.
And if I might add also a bit, because we spoke about the technology part, but also part of the hiring experience is being the more transparent as we can, because it's stressful to have an interview, right? It's tough, and you need to be super focused and so on. And I would say I would really love as a candidate to know what will be the process, where I will be assessed on which, let's say, parts, and so on. And also what we did with Anneliese and the team here, it's first to publish, I would say very early if we compare to the other, let's say, tech companies. So late September, early October, we published our AI guidelines for candidate interviews, also to explain to everyone what we are going to do. For example, having transcript and so on, so we can on our side better focus on the candidate during the interview, and also to describe to every candidate when and how they can use AI in the hiring process and when they should not. For example, one-to-one, an interview, it should be human to human. I shouldn't be trying to read a transcript just to have a perfect answer for Anneliese, for example. You know what? So it was a foundational piece of our, I would say here, strategy and vision, is to say, okay, this is how we are going to use AI, and this is how we expect you to use AI, because I think it's so important also to mention to them, to the candidates, that it is expected, right, to use AI, because in their day-to-day, it will be expected to. So, and then when you are applying, we mention it, I think, at least 5 times in every pieces of the text and so on. Okay, you will be speaking with Emma. Emma is not a real person, and this is pretty much okay. And so you need to be comfortable with that. And if you have any question, please, refer to your recruiter or go and read more on the AI guidelines.
I just think that's so important. That level of transparency is so important because, as you say, there is a lot of mistrust of AI from candidates. And I think a lot of it is because companies aren't being that transparent or that clear about AI in the recruiting process. How have the candidates responded, the people who've sort of gone through this process? What's the feedback been like?
Yeah, candidates have actually responded really well. As of early June, almost 83% of participants have rated the experience as 4 or 5 stars. 79% of candidates found the process fair. And 80% of candidates actually had an improved perception of Mirakl after the experience, which I particularly really like that metric. So overall, the candidate experience and candidate feedback has been quite good. In fact, some of the qualitative feedback I'm thinking of is many candidates sort of say that they forget they're speaking with an AI when they connect with Emma. So we love seeing those comments as well. But yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the transparency that we showcase up front. To JB's point, we have very clearly stated AI guidelines. And then throughout the recruitment process, specifically, we call out where AI might be used. And so in our intern campaign, right, where we're using Emma, that's both at the job description and it's even at an automated message that everyone receives when they apply. So we are very upfront about our use of it. And I think that helps build some of the trust at the very beginning.
And what about the recruiting results? What has this solved some of the challenges that you were trying to solve?
Yeah, I think so. We've seen some really exciting results. I think at a high level, the key win for us is that we are able to screen 2.5 times more candidates than our previous campaign. So meaning 2.5 times more candidates had the opportunity to be evaluated by Mirakl, which I think is also a great candidate experience signal as well, even outside of sort of that efficiency gain. We're also seeing that quality is maintained as well. So in general, our conversion from TA screen to hiring manager screen has increased by 47%. And then application to offers increased by 7%. And when we look at sort of a matched pairs analysis, right? So comparing roles that were open both in our previous campaign and this campaign, most notably our application to offer conversion increased by 48%. So we're actually seeing that stronger candidates are entering the funnel as well and being converted to offers. So overall, we're really excited about some of these results.
It's just such an interesting time in terms of how this is going to develop, and I suppose this next question, this is something that is kind of much debated. But where do you think the line between humans and machines? Where should it be drawn in the hiring process? Where will it be drawn in the hiring process?
I could start with this. I think that machines will and should always support. I think that they should be leveraged to improve our ability to make more objective, evidence-based hiring decisions. But I think humans should always be in the driver's seat of making critical decisions and providing that great candidate experience. So for me, it's machines and AI play a supporting role to enhance our ability to make great decisions, but ultimately should never lead.
Thanks to AI and let's say all the systems, I think we'll be able to spend more time as humans. So human to humans, right? Because my vision on this is AI should take everything that is not, let's say, the best thing in my day. And the best thing in my day is speaking to candidates. The best thing in my day is not scheduling, meetings, finding, availability from whoever and so on, right? So by doing so, I think our job will be even better, right? Because we'll do what requires human judgment, what is difficult, and what makes our job interesting. So I see, that our job might evolve into whatever the job title, but, more in the strategist or, as a talent strategist, just to think about the future, sitting down with the hiring manager, department leaders, and so on, to think about what is, let's say, the best talent, what does look like the best talent for that open role, or let's say the multiple roles that we are having open in the department. I think we'll go faster also than ever. Because sometimes, and that's pretty much okay, right? But it takes time just to learn from our, let's say, good or not so good experiences. Maybe it's not the right persona, maybe it's not the right skill set, maybe the compensation band is not the right one, and so on. And, it requires also a ton of time just to have a step back, analyze, and making sure that, we understand why we are not able to close the role. And as we speak, let's say the target at Mirakl is we need to fill a role by 55 days, which is pretty fast, right? Sometimes we are waiting, and most of the time we are waiting, to hit the 45 days just to start having that process mechanism to have a step back, understand, are we able to close in the next 10 or 15 days the role? Yes, no, if no, why? And if we are just, if I might say, discovering at 45 or 50 days that the past candidate we are all failing at a specific point or whatever. And I think that the challenge will be, okay, how we can have AI doing this, forcing mechanism just to reassess every time as soon as we are inputting a new scorecard, as soon as we are seeing a new candidate, from all the stages, we can do that at scale. And so I think AI will force that discipline that was hard to catch because we are facing a volume and so on, and we have less resources, I think like every talent acquisition team in the world. So it's really applying the same bar and the same level of expectation and almost mathematical or scientific approach at scale on every process.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's certainly an interesting journey in terms of also how what we feel comfortable with is changing as well when you can kind of see the results come through. As a sort of final question to you both, if we sort of look sort of 2 or 3 years in the future, I mean, how do you think applying for a job and hiring people, how's it going to feel different from what it might feel like now?
I think it'll feel very different. I think there could be a world where, and I know JB would like to see this, there might be no, resumes. People are not using resumes anymore, right? Where perhaps, arranging an interview is fully self-scheduled. Maybe the interview process is done asynchronously. I think that certainly there will be AI-led assessments versus live assessments. So I think it could look quite different. I think, as we were mentioning, job seekers will engage with TA teams in different ways. I'd like to think on a more in-depth level than perhaps they have traditionally. But yeah, I think it could feel quite different than how it's always been done.
Yes, I think in 2 or 3 years from now, I hope that we'll be moving away from having only a resume or LinkedIn profile just to take first decision. I hope that we find a way to completely remove that. And I think honestly, I'm pretty confident we are moving into that way. And I know how many decades we have been reviewing applications, but I think it will change significantly. So I'm very happy for that. I'm optimistic about that future. Like Anneliese, I think all the admin tasks will be almost removed, I hope. And also I see that, maybe it's old-fashioned, but we'll spend more time, like I said earlier, but together sitting in the same room, right? It's like we need to reconnect, even, with the office, with the premises, with the, I might say, the feeling, when you are in a company. Also, this is the atmosphere. You can see sometimes the culture written on the wall, or in the, when you're in the lift and just having some small talks and so on. So I really see that definitely people will be connected together, sitting in the office, even during the interview process. And I think we'll be more, everyone, also the candidates will be more, if I might say, picky about all those very human, and being the human part of the experience.
Fantastic. JB, Anneliese, thank you very much for talking to me. My thanks to JB and Anneliese. You can follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can search all the past episodes at recruitingfuture.com. On that site, you can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter, Recruiting Future Feast, and get the inside track on everything that's coming up on the show. Thanks very much for listening. I'll be back next time, and I hope you'll join me.
This is my show.